For more on how President Biden's infrastructure plan could help cities like New Orleans in the face of natural disasters, let's bring in Walter Isaacson. He's a resident of New Orleans, where he's a history professor at Tulane University. He's also a CNBC contributor. He wears a lot of other hats, too. Walter, it's great to see you this morning.
Great to be with you, Becky. So
let's just start with what Elon was talking about. We did have Senator Cassidy here on Squawk Box yesterday. He jumped on it. He was talking about the damage there, but he said, look, this is why we need this infrastructure bill for a place like Louisiana, where damage can come pretty frequently. What do you think about where infrastructure stands?
I think Senator Cassidy is exactly right. And, you know, there's been a lot of over-dramatization of what happened in this storm. In New Orleans, the levees held. That was the great federal infrastructure project after 1,800 people got killed in Katrina. Here, you didn't have anybody killed by raging floodwaters. I think there was one auto death in New Orleans for this whole thing. Why? Because there was no flooding. The federal levees held. Likewise, there hasn't been much property damage. I know it looks bad on TV, but in the city itself, electricity is now coming back on. And I think that what was just talked about is right, that you have to protect the electricity grid. That's the next infrastructure project we have. And that's not just for hurricanes. That's when those storms hit the Northeast. That's when you have major snowstorms. We have a fragile electricity grid. I've been traveling around looking at Tesla Energy for something I'm doing on Elon Musk. And I'm looking at how these power pack walls and decentralized electricity grids are coming online. Those are the type of things I think we're going to need in the future.
Hey, Walter, to take on big infrastructure projects like that, it's no joke, because even the regulatory permits for electric companies that are trying to do some of these changes, it's not easy. If you're trying to build lines that can take power generated in one area and get it to another place, it takes years and years to get just the approvals for some of those things. Do you think that?
Yeah, no, that's a really big problem. Yeah. And it's something the government's just going to have to wake up and do. You see it in California, where there's a lot of regulation. And certainly, whether it's infrastructure projects like power lines or levees or anything, better airports, better roads, there's not in my backyard this fighting, using all sorts of legal maneuvers to fight upgrades of infrastructure is something that's held this country back.
In terms of what you found, traveling around the country, looking at our potential to be able to come up with these power charging stations for electric vehicles, I mean, we've set some pretty ambitious standards for how many electric vehicles will be sold in this country. You think there's a chance that we can build up the infrastructure in time to actually charge all those vehicles?
Oh, yeah. You see charging stations now all over as, you know, Teslas have become the most popular car being bought these days. More importantly, I was down in Texas installing solar roof panels, just things that look just like a solar roof tile connected to a Tesla battery pack on the side of a wall. I think these type of things will give a decentralization to the electric grid, a resilience to it. And these will be the wave of the future. And these aren't things that are expensive. These are not huge projects that are billions of dollars. These are things that pay off.
Hey, well, Walter, this is giving grist to a whole different kind of discussion. And just for lack of a better way to describe it, I'll talk about the Wall Street Journal's opinion pages and how they view infrastructure versus how maybe the far left views human infrastructure. So now Henninger wrote today talking about why Ida wasn't Katrina, and exactly what you said, $14 billion worth of levees, but they didn't harden the power grid enough, and that's where the problem is now. But highlighting that maybe that's the type of it. That's why we talk about physical infrastructure and why, you know, the right distinguishes it from human infrastructure, because that's where it would be spent. And then even further, the Journal the other day ended an editorial saying we can't stop the rising tides, but we can toughen up our response to what happens during catastrophic events. And that was saying all this money that California spent on fossil fuel minimization and carbon, but they didn't clean up their forest management. They didn't harden the power grid. They didn't bury the power lines. So all these things are happening that we could deal with, and we've got Green New Deal, pie in the sky type ideas that, you know, who knows whether they pay off in 50 years or 100 years or not.
Well, the one thing we can say paid off was the investment in the levees after Hurricane Katrina. I walk on those levees. I live right near those levees. They didn't even get over top this time in a powerful Category 4 storm that came right up in the worst ways, just to the west of New Orleans. So I do think you're right. Number one, focus on things that are hard infrastructure, physical projects, which means a good electricity grid, perhaps a decentralized electricity grid. The levees like were built in New Orleans that protected us against a Category 4 storm, so you didn't see that flooding that you had after Katrina. Nobody was sort of hit by walls of water. Yeah, I'm going to let California figure out what it wants to do on a variety of things, but when you're talking about Louisiana, just give us good levees, a good power grid, and, the airport, which is new in New Orleans, that's a good piece of it.